Today, Monday the 19th, has been called Freedom Day in England as most legal restrictions on social contact have been lifted. There are now no limits on how many people can meet, and table service won't be necessary in pubs and restaurants. The British Prime Minister has urged everyone to remain cautious, with a warning that the number of new infections will continue to surge. From today, face coverings are not required by law, although they are recommended in some crowded public spaces such as public transport. Nightclubs can reopen and theatres and cinemas can return to full capacity. This comes despite concern about a wave of new cases, more than 50,000 per day across the United Kingdom. More than 500,000 alerts telling people to quarantine were sent by the National Health Service COVID-19 app in England and Wales in the first week of July. Lakshmi Gopal has this report, a warning it contains some flashing images.
The moment they've been waiting for over a year. The final stage of unlocking in England, with social distancing rules dropped. 1,000 people packed into this club in central London, with many more lining up outside. They've waited 16 months. What's a little longer?
There's so many people here, and we're just so pumped to get in there.
It's been a year and a half, and now we're all just ready to dance.
I've had my vaccines. I want to have a good time, hon.
So excited, can't wait for it.
It's just like a relief after such a long time, just have freedom.
Nightclubs are one of the few businesses that have had to stay closed throughout the whole pandemic, among the last to reopen.
And this is what many have waited so long for, and what the nightlife industry has so desperately needed.
Some feel the sector has been sidelined.
The last year has been hell on earth. I mean, it's been very, very difficult. If you look at what happened last week with the football compared with what's happening tonight, and you think, why were we treated differently?
All we're doing is taking the screens out, putting them into storage.
It's more sedate, but no less celebratory at this pub in West London, where they're preparing for an end to table service only and mandatory masks.
I can't wait to enjoy doing our job rather than sort of having to basically be a policeman the whole time and just lecturing people on what they can and can't do, where they can and can't go, the masks they wear, what they touch, where they sanitise, where they track and trace. It's going to be strange for us to adapt again, and the notion of people coming into the pub being able to go to the table themselves without being directed.
There is concern about restrictions easing at a time when COVID cases in the UK are rising.
We're at the point where 10% just over of intensive care beds in England are occupied by people who have got COVID. So there's been a significant increase in pressure on intensive care services over the last few weeks.
With experts warning that cases could surge further, and with a third of adults not yet fully vaccinated, the worry is at what price this new freedom? Lakshmi Gopal, BBC News.
Well, the British Prime Minister has urged the public to remain cautious. Boris Johnson is himself isolating after his health minister tested positive on Saturday. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake has the latest from Downing Street.
If there was a reminder that although all legal restrictions in England are being lifted today, it is not a return to normal, then the government itself has provided one. The Prime Minister, as you say, isolating at his country residence in Chequers, nowhere to be seen here in Downing Street. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, also isolating, both having come into contact with the Health Secretary Sajid Javid, who has tested positive for coronavirus, and they are isolating only after an initial decision yesterday to allow them to take part in a test scheme, pilot scheme, which would have enabled them to carry on working, even though they've been told to isolate and take daily tests, was reversed after something of a backlash by the Labour Party, the opposition Labour Party and others, accusing the government of double standards. But it is a reminder that government ministers, like so many hundreds of thousands of others, have been told to isolate in the last few days and the last couple of weeks as cases here in the United Kingdom of coronavirus continue to rise. Nevertheless, these restrictions are being lifted. There is now no legal limitations on the number of people you can meet with indoors or outdoors in every other aspect of daily life. The government feels it can do this because of the vaccination programme, which it points to as being successful. Around 2/3 of adults in the UK have had both jabs so far. 88% have had one jab, and that is the reason, on the balance of risks, Downing Street says it's able to take this decision to lift all restrictions in England.
Yeah, and Jonathan, the rest of the world will be watching closely to see what does happen, sort of almost an experiment happening here.
Yes, and indeed the government has been warned it's taking a gamble. The Labour Party have described it as reckless to lift all restrictions at once. And there has been a debate here in the UK about whether this is the right thing to do at this time. But there are some unknown factors, despite the government's confidence that it is able to do this safely. How will people respond? Everyone is being told to use their judgment, to act responsibly and act with caution, but different people will do that in different ways. And there is some confusion still around wearing masks and where that is appropriate or required and where it's not. Again, there's no legal requirement for people to do that, but different businesses, different sectors of the economy are putting in place their own guidance and making their own decisions. So plenty of unknowns and an uncertain few weeks and months ahead here. One thing is for sure, cases of coronavirus will rise. The number of people going to hospital will almost certainly rise, but the government will have to hope that it doesn't rise by too much and it's able to carry on without reimposing restrictions later on in the year.